Asbestos poisoning. Is Johns Manville, the world's biggest asbestos producer, guilty of destroying the health and lives of a generation of workers?
My second shift foreman, Harry Barris, is dead, and Henry Taylor, the third shift foreman, he's dead.
This, plus charges of a corporate cover-up, are examined on this week's Jack Anderson Confidential. Also, why have Vietnamese refugees carrying highly contagious diseases been allowed into this country without proper health screening? For the answers, watch this week's Jack Anderson Confidential. At the time of the assassination of Egyptian President Anwar Sadat, he was investigating reports of a major scandal involving billions of dollars. It implicated his closest associates and high-ranking U.S. officials. An exclusive report. The Maverick Missile has cost the American people $6 billion so far. And does it work?
I would not know how you would define a boondoggle if you didn't find the Maverick as a boondoggle.
These stories coming up next on Jack Anderson Confidential. Now from Washington, here is Jack Anderson.
A smoldering question mark hangs over Israel today. Who is to blame for the massacre of Palestinian refugees? This question will be examined by a board of inquiry. But I've spoken to sources in Israel who know what happened. They tell me that two men are responsible for unleashing the phalanges. The two are Prime Minister Menachem Begin and Defense Minister Ariel Sharon. Of course, they didn't approve of the massacre, but Israeli intelligence warned in advance that it could happen. Many Israeli officials believe the real culprit is Sharon. They tell me that Sharon pushed Israel into a war that could have been avoided, that Sharon has now disgraced the Israeli army. I spent an evening with Sharon last month at his ranch. He made it clear that he didn't like restrictions.
When a Jew was killed, immediately we were asked to show self-restraint. I mean, from all around the world, we got requests. Please show self-restraint. And believe me, we showed self-restraint for a long time.
Sharon also tried to justify his military actions in Lebanon.
Since the war started in 1975 between the PLO terrorist organizations and the Christians, the number of people killed in Lebanon was over 100,000 dead and over 300,000 wounded.
I've had access to the CIA's secret psychological profile of Sharon. It uses words like brilliant, ruthless, and ambitious to describe him. But the word that stands out is ruthless. In 1953, he led a commando attack that wiped out the Palestinian village of Kibbeh. 66 people were killed in retaliation for the brutal murder of an Israeli mother and child. My Israeli sources say that Israel will purge its shame by ousting Ariel Sharon. When I return, a report on a $6 billion Pentagon boondoggle.
If in all the world you could have only one source of news and information, what would you want it to be? Think about that for a second. Only one source of news and information. What would it be? If you say Time magazine, you're not alone. More than 29 million people all over the world turn to Time's lively pages each week to catch up on what's new and what's news everywhere in every field. With writing so fresh and pictures so colorful, you enjoy every minute and start looking forward to the next issue. When? Time is back again with the latest books and movies. What's happening with sports, business, and people, and what may happen next. In all, Time gives you 30 exciting departments of news and ideas. And now, Time makes one of its biggest offers ever. 26 weeks of Time for less than 79 cents an issue. Over 45% off Time's cover price. Payable in 3 easy installments of $6.77. So call toll free 1-800-621-3024. Oh, by the way, with your paid subscription, we'll also send you Time's Desk Reference Library, the Webster Dictionary, Roget's Thesaurus, and the Signet Hammond World Atlas, free. Call 1-800-621-3024. Get Time's Desk Reference Library, free, and Time for 3 easy installments of $6.77. Our operators are standing by. Remember, Time is over 45% off, and the reference library, all 3 books, is free.
Everyone in Washington is for God, country, and economy. But the Pentagon favors economies in someone else's budget. Staggering amounts have been lavished on armaments that should have been scrapped or never should have been built in the first place. Today, I want to tell you about one of them. The story is reported by my associates Indy Badwar and Don Goldberg. These are various models of the anti-tank Maverick Missile. Each one costs close to $100,000, and the price is rising. The missile looks impressive. It's an electronic marvel. There's only one problem. It'll cost an estimated $6 billion, and it doesn't work. So last week, a select group of Pentagon officials gathered behind closed doors to discuss the problem. What was their solution? They authorized the purchase of 200 missiles that still don't work. Some experts call it a $6 billion boondoggle. Congressional critics agree.
If that isn't a boondoggle, I don't know what is. I mean, I would not know how you would define a boondoggle if you didn't find the Maverick as a boondoggle. The cost overruns have been phenomenal. You could even take the cost overruns if they got you something. But to have all the cost overruns and it still doesn't meet the criteria it was to meet, and it still doesn't meet its goals, then all you've done is spend money. It's not where it's supposed to be. The people who use it don't like it. And if that isn't a boondoggle, we don't know how to define the word.
This is a bootleg film of an early Maverick test.
Maverick, up left.
The test pilot is complaining that he has failed to find and fix the target in his sights. Here he is complaining that the computer is locked into a tree.
Yeah, that was a tree.
The latest version of the Maverick uses an infrared sensor for targeting enemy tanks. But the infrared gadgetry is no improvement. In fact, it's worse. Oh, the Maverick does have its defenders. An Air Force spokesman told my office that the Maverick is misunderstood, that it gives the Air Force nighttime capability. The most powerful proponent is Texas Senator John Tower, chairman of the Senate Armed Services Committee. Here's what he has to say.
Well, it can be fired from a considerable distance out, 2 to 6 miles, which means that the carrier doesn't have to imperil himself to get in close to deliver the ordnance. And 2, it's accurate and can be used in virtually all kinds of weather and at night. None of our existing airborne systems can be used in that way. They have to have visual acquisition and visual targeting.
Some of the nation's best pilots disagree. One is Colonel Bob Dilger. He led most major bombing and strafing missions over North Vietnam.
The fact of the matter is all weapons at this point in time in history require that the pilot detect, search, and find the target with his eyeball. This is limited to somewhere in the order of about 1 mile or less. When you have a camouflage tank that blends in quite well with the background, it's very difficult, if not impossible, to see much beyond a mile.
How long would you have to maintain a consistent low flight pattern using a Maverick in order to actually eyeball the target?
The gun system takes 2 or 3 seconds. The Maverick is substantially longer than that. Probably in the order of 10 seconds or more.
Would that make the pilot more vulnerable to anti-aircraft fire?
Absolutely. Your predictable flight path, straight level flight path is is a problem area for a pilot. He never wants to do that when he's in an area where he can be fired upon. He wants to be unpredictable. He wants to require the enemy to be clairvoyant, to know where he's going to be 5 or 10 seconds from now, and that would give the enemy time to zero in on that position. If you're going in a straight level flight, then they know where you're going to be.
Therefore, you're kind of a kamikaze, and nobody likes to be in that position. With electronics and with our technology where it is today, we should never expose our pilots to that kind of risk. Never.
We keep spending billions of dollars, meanwhile, on the Maverick. Yet the Air Force has an alternative, which is not only less expensive, but more effective. This is the 30-millimeter cannon. It can be fired at close range with devastating impact. The cost of destroying a tank with a 30-millimeter cannon is $600. The cost of destroying the same tank with a Maverick, if it can be done, is near $100,000. The Air National Guard has studied the Maverick. The more it finds out about the Maverick, the better the National Guard likes the 30-millimeter gun. I don't mean to say that the Maverick is ineffective. It's an effective weapon, all right, but unhappily, on a busy battlefield, it's effective against our own tanks. You see, the Maverick is a heat-seeking missile. It zeroes in on the heat coming out of a tank's exhaust. And guess which tank has the hottest exhaust in the world? Our own M1. In a moment, the makings of a multi-million-dollar scandal involving U.S. military aid to Egypt.
It'll never work.
We're testing whether Tegrin shampoo can keep baseball star Jim Palmer's dandruff under control for 3 days. Tegrin Shake, Day 1.
Looking good, so far.
Tegrin Shake, Day 2.
Tegrin's still working, but the game's not over.
Yeah. Tegrin Shake, Day 3.
Incredible. Tegrin did it.
All right, yeah, it works.
From now on, I'm trusting Tegrin.
Try Tegrin. It works on dandruff.
Really works.
Between shampoos.
Egyptian President Anwar Sadat was gunned down at an opportune time. Opportune for some of his closest associates who were implicated in a scandal. The scandal reached into the highest ranks of Egypt's military and intelligence services. Millions of dollars allegedly were stolen from the U.S. military assistance program. My associates Dale Van Atta and Indy Badwar have been investigating the story for more than a year. Van Atta flew to Egypt, Israel, and Lebanon to track down the details. In Cairo, he spoke to an influential Egyptian businessman named Mossad Abu el-Kir Badra.
Have millions of dollars been stolen from the U.S. military assistance program to Egypt?
For sure.
Who stole it?
The Minister of Defense.
Named?
General Kamal Hassan Ali.
And what is he now?
He is the Minister of Foreign Affairs.
The scandal worked like this. A tight little group of insiders secretly set up a company which grabbed the contract for shipping all U.S. arms to Egypt. The group included the brother-in-law of Egyptian President Mubarak, who also directs Egyptian military procurement in Washington. A secret understanding was reached at the Camp David peace parley that the United States would finance the military buildup of Egypt. The cost has been staggering. In 3 years, it has soared to $3.5 billion. Now let's turn to the secret shipping contract. I've had access to a copy. The shipper's cut, I'm now quoting from the contract, is up to 9.875% of the value of the material shipped. Now that would be a ton of money. The Egyptian insiders set up a company that they called EATSCO. That's short for Egyptian American Transport and Services Corporation. I heard it was a corporate shell which used legitimate companies to do the actual shipping. Then EATSCO happily took the profits for itself. Van Atta tried to talk with EATSCO officials. He found the EATSCO building in the wealthy Cairo suburb of Heliopolis.
Is Mr. Klein's here at all? Nor Mr. Salim? Who's in charge when they're gone?
The manager, and he's on vacation.
General Mahmoud, or?
Yeah.
And he's gone too?
Yeah, he's gone on vacation.
Who's in charge after him?
We have Mr. Buck here, who's in charge now.
Can I talk to him?
Yeah, sure. No, he's very busy, really.
Yeah, what was his name?
Buck.
How long has the company been here? A couple of years?
Can't tell you anything, really. I'm sorry.
As you can see, no one seemed to be in charge of EATSCO. There was no visible signs of activity. Strange for a company with billings in the hundreds of millions of dollars. Bill Fiorito is an American businessman with close ties to U.S. intelligence. After the Camp David agreement, he headed a consortium of American and Egyptian businessmen who sought shipping business from the new Egyptian-American military program.
There's a little thing called a MAPOD list. I mean, it's an acronym for some long thing that no one understands, but in order to ship American goods to a host country under the aid program, you have to be put on that list by the host country. And it has to go through our control system here in the Pentagon and all that. So in order to set this whole thing in motion, we were assured through the Egyptian people that General Kamal Hassan Ali, at the time who was Minister of Defense, that we were going on the list. It kept being promised and it never happened.
These official Egyptian documents are secret. Let me read from one of them. The Ministry of Defense has appointed Tursam Company as its exclusive transport, shipping, and insurance agent in all related matters for all its military imports from the United States of America. Tursam owns the controlling stock of EATSCO, whose president was an American. His name is Tom Kleins. He's a shadowy figure who used to direct the training for the CIA's Dirty Tricks division. In 1979, he and his associates met with Fiorito at the fashionable Madison Hotel in Washington.
This meeting evidently was arranged as a result of the pressures, that we were putting on in the Pentagon, in the Congress, and through our general supply system. And the people in Cairo arranged a meeting for me to meet with the then Defense Minister, Kamal Hassan Ali, in Washington, D.C. Boom, the security is fantastic. It took a Sherman tank to go through the place. I mean, we went through like, I walk into a suite and there are a number of people there. General Abu Ghazal is there, who was in charge of the military attaché office here in Washington. This Hussein Salim, and a fella laying on the bed. And so the first thing that Salim does is he jumps up and he hands me a card. Here, look. It says, the Egyptian-American Shipping Company, and here he is, he's the chairman of the board. So they formed an American company, and in the next breath he said, meet Tom Kleins over here. Well, who's Tom Kleins? So Tom Kleins gets up off the bed, we shake hands. He's the president of the company. And I find out now at a later date, who's Tom Kleins, an experienced shipping guy? No, he is the top CIA training agent, I guess, in the world.
What was the real purpose of that meeting at the Madison between you and the Egyptian Foreign Minister, Kamal Hassan Ali? Was he trying to buy you off? Was he trying to buy your silence?
Absolutely. The basic thing was, well, okay, we'll split this 50% American flag and blah, 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 blah. So with that, I'm ushered down the hall, and General Kamal Hassan Ali is there, and he says, are you satisfied now? And if I recall correctly, I said, well, when I see the contract, I'll be satisfied. And, those were true words. The contract never came down. This is where this so-called scam comes in. They took all the machinery of the two governments, put them together for their own use.
The scandal is under investigation by the U.S. Attorney's Office in Virginia. Both present and former CIA and Pentagon officials are involved. I've learned that Tom Clines, who was recently removed as president at ISCO, is under grand jury scrutiny. My associate, Dale Van Atta, located Clines' home in Middleburg, in the heart of Virginia's posh horse country. But he was told Clines was not there. And at ISCO headquarters, located in Virginia, they tried to meet any official of the company. But again, they were told that no one was available. The grand jury is also investigating Erich von Marbod. He formerly headed the military assistance program in the Pentagon. He was assigned by ex-Defense Secretary Harold Brown to oversee the Egyptian shipping contract. Also, Major General Richard Secord, who is now a Deputy Assistant Secretary of Defense. In a moment, I'll report on the status of Mrs. Cheryl Flowers, whose Medicaid case was called to President Reagan's attention. He asked me to follow through on it. I have. And in a moment, my report. And then a suggestion to the president that could save the country billions of dollars. 2 weeks ago, I invited several Americans to speak into a camera and tell President Reagan what was on their minds. I brought the films to the White House and showed them to the president. He listened sympathetically and answered their concerns. One of the aggrieved citizens was Cheryl Flowers of St. Louis. She had a question that the president asked me to double check.
My name is Cheryl Flowers. I live in St. Louis, Missouri. I work part-time. I'm on AFDC, and I need Medicaid because I have an 11-month-old. He's a very sickly baby, and I need the Medicaid to take him back and forth to the doctor. But you can't get Medicaid and work too. But I really need Medicaid. Mr. President, why are you making all these budget cuts? Why can't you let some of us mothers that would like to work and get the Medicaid too?
Well, Mrs. Flowers, we haven't been making budget cuts to speak of. We've been cutting the rate of increase in the budget, but we're spending more on the program such as you're talking about there than we were spending last year, and last year more than the year before. I know there's a misunderstanding about this, but as to your particular problem, Mrs. Flowers, the states, not the federal government, sets the standards for Medicaid. And in your state, Missouri, that's one of the states in which if you are eligible for aid for dependent children, you are eligible for Medicaid. And Jack, if there's some reason why she is not getting that, in addition, while she's eligible for aid for dependent children, I'd like to know about it and look into it, because that is the standard of that state. And maybe somebody's making a mistake if she isn't getting it.
We'll find out.
All right.
But I think she's speaking for a lot of women and a lot of men who want to work but can't get jobs that pay enough. They have to depend upon some welfare. If they take the jobs, they're no longer eligible for the welfare.
What with taxes to pay, the level of income that you have to receive to equal what you're getting on welfare is many times more than a person can get in just starting into a new position. If she isn't getting Medicaid, there's something wrong. I want to know about that.
My staff checked the Flowers case with the Missouri Department of Social Services. The president is correct that the state sets the standards. Ms. Flowers is eligible to receive Medicaid, but only if she works part-time. And she wants to work full-time, but then she would earn too much money, and she would lose her Medicaid benefits. And now my suggestion to the president. There's been some disturbing economic news this past week. One reason for the distress is government spending. Now, there's a simple way to reduce spending. Cut down on government waste. Any federal employee could tell you about waste, if he would only talk. But he has little incentive to talk. He's better off if he keeps his mouth shut. You see, the average bureaucrat has two watchwords: expenditure and expansion. The more the government spends, the more his office will expand. Then the higher he'll rise on the federal totem pole. Spending money sends his status and salary up. Saving money pushes his status and salary down. So all you have to do, Mr. President, is reverse the incentive. Offer the bureaucrats a more substantial reward for seeking out and eliminating unnecessary expenditures. Give them a flat 10% of all the money they save. Under my plan, the bureaucrats would have more to gain by searching for ways to reduce expenditures than looking for ways to spend money. They would get 1/10 of the savings, but the taxpayers would get the best deal. They'd save 90%. Next week, I'll tell you about this man who's suffering from asbestos lung disease. He can't live without a respirator. It's a look at a tragic and outrageous corporate cover-up of the dangers of working with asbestos. I'm Jack Anderson in Washington.
Jack Anderson Confidential is a Jack Berry and Dan Enright production in association with Able Communications.
What I want to do here is just go through the names of the people that we believe were involved.
The Minister of Defense.
Named?
General Kamal Hassan Ali.
And what is he now?
He is the Minister of Foreign Affairs.
Who else?
He is the top. He is the man who can say yes and say no.
Who else was involved that was close to him?
Nobody. In our country, there is only one man
who was
giving decision, the top man.
The military attaché in Washington at the time.
He is under the Minister of Defense. He cannot say yes, he cannot say no.
From the West Coast to the East Coast, across the Atlantic to London and Frankfurt to Hawaii, fly World Airways to the world of your dreams. World, the airline for people who hate to waste money.